Investigators say she was beaten near a tree by a group of people. She then ran off to the pond area where the attack continued.
I just want justice for her. That's all I want. She don't deserve to die that way.
How could a peaceful day in the park turn into a scene of unimaginable horror? What drives individuals to commit such brutal acts in broad daylight, in a place meant for calm and safety? On a quiet evening in September of 2020, a brutal and senseless act of violence unfolded in Washington Park, Milwaukee, that would deeply shock the community. Ely, a gentle soul and beloved member of her community, became the victim of one of the most horrifying crimes the city had ever witnessed. She was brutally assaulted and left to die in broad daylight in the middle of the park. Her murder raised alarming questions about the safety of public spaces and the senseless violence that could occur in a place meant for relaxation and recreation. Today, we explore the tragic case of Ely, the investigation that led to the arrest of her attackers, and the lasting impact her murder had on the community. Her story is one of vulnerability, resilience, and an urgent call for justice. Ely was a 36-year-old Hmong American woman who faced her share of challenges but carried a kind heart and a hopeful spirit. Born into a culturally rich and tight-knit family, Ely's life reflected the duality of struggles and resilience common among immigrants and their descendants. Originally from Laos, she had immigrated to the United States with her family in search for a better life. E had faced struggles related to mental health and homelessness. But despite these difficulties, she was known for her gentle demeanor and quiet resilience. At the time of her death, Ely was living in Milwaukee, trying to find stability in her life. She stayed connected with her family and sought solace in Milwaukee's public spaces, particularly Washington Park, a community hub she often visited, which is a large public park with scenic views and open spaces. However, what should have been a peaceful day at the park turned into a nightmare when E was attacked in one of the most brutal crimes that the city had seen in recent years. To those who knew her, she was more than just her struggles. She was a human being, deserving of safety, love, and dignity. Washington Park was one of Milwaukee's gems, a place where families gathered, children played, and friends shared moments of joy. While the park had its challenges, including reports of occasional safety concerns, it remained a cherished part of the community. This sense of familiarity and normalcy made what happened on September 16, 2020 all the more shocking. On the evening of September 16, Ely was in Washington Park. Tragically, her visit turned into a nightmare. Ely was brutally beaten and sexually assaulted near the lagoon in Washington Park. Her attackers left her gravely injured and bleeding in the open, where she was later found by passers-by. She was rushed into a nearby hospital, but succumbed to her injuries shortly after. The details of the attack were horrifying. What began as harassment escalated into unimaginable violence. The attackers beat Ely savagely, using their fists, feet, and even tree branches. Witnesses reported that the group took turns assaulting her, both physically and sexually. At one point, one of the suspects struck her with such force that both he and Lee collapsed to the ground. The attackers later dragged her near a pond and left her struggling for breath. Her body severely battered, her body severely battered and broken. The sheer savagery of the attack sent shock waves through Milwaukee, leaving the community in fear and calling for swift justice. Milwaukee police quickly launched an investigation into Ely's murder, canvassing the area for witnesses and searching for any leads that could point to her killers. Washington Park was a popular spot, and authorities hoped that someone had seen or heard something that could lead them to the perpetrators. Investigators also turned to surveillance footage from the area in an attempt to piece together the events leading up to the crime. Though Ely had been a vulnerable woman with limited resources, the brutality of the attack suggested that the killers had acted with unimaginable cruelty. The investigation into Ely's murder was swift but chilling. Surveillance footage from the park revealed glimpses of the attack, and witnesses came forward with information. After weeks of investigation, police arrested two teenage boys in connection with the murder of Ely. The suspects, aged 15 and 17, were charged with first-degree intentional homicide and sexual assault. The arrest shocked the community even further, as many struggled to comprehend how individuals so young could commit such a heinous crime. The two teenagers, whose names were withheld due to their age, initially denied involvement in the crime. However, under questioning, one of the suspects admitted to being present during the attack and implicated the other one in the assault. He admitted to slapping and sexually assaulting Lee, but tried to downplay his involvement. The other suspect, on the other hand, was described as particularly aggressive, delivering blows that ultimately caused fatal injuries. The confession detailed a chilling sequence of events in which the teenagers had come across Ely in the park and decided to attack her without any provocation. What made this case even more harrowing was the inaction of bystanders who witnessed parts of the attack but failed to intervene or even call for help. The investigation revealed that the teens had filmed part of the attack on their phones, a disturbing detail that underscores the callousness of their actions. The footage, recovered by police, provided additional evidence of their involvement in Ely's murder and sexual assault. This digital evidence was key in building the case against the two teens. As investigation progressed, it became clear that Ely's murder was not a crime of passion, but a senseless and brutal act of violence. The community was left reeling, with many struggling to understand how such a horrific crime could have been carried out by individuals so young. The legal proceedings for the suspects began in early of 2021. Both teens were charged as adults due to the severity of the crime, and prosecutors argued that their actions demonstrated a level of cruelty and disregard for human life that warranted the harshest penalty available under the law. During the trial, prosecutors presented the evidence against the teens, including the confessions, digital evidence, and witness statements. The prosecution emphasized that Ely had been a vulnerable woman who was targeted and attacked simply because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The brutal nature of the crime, combined with the ages of the perpetrators, made it one of the most disturbing cases in Milwaukee's recent history. The trial concluded with both teens being convicted of first-degree intentional homicide and sexual assault. They were sentenced to lengthy prison terms, ensuring that they would spend many years behind bars for the crime. The verdict brought some measures of justice for Ely and her family, but the pain of her loss remained. Ely's family has expressed immense grief over her tragic death, highlighting the deep pain caused by the crime. Her sister, Nancy Lee, called the perpetrators horrible people and described her sister's suffering as unimaginable. The murder of Ely sent shockwaves through Milwaukee, particularly its Hmong community. It highlighted several critical issues, including violence in public spaces, the vulnerability of individuals facing homelessness or mental health struggles, and the rising concerns over youth involvement in violent crime. Many in the community called for increased security measures in public parks. The crime also raised awareness about the challenges faced by those in precarious living situations, like Ely, who had few resources and limited support systems. Advocacy groups pushed for greater attention to be given to protecting vulnerable populations, including those experiencing homelessness, mental health issues, or addiction. The crime became a rallying point for discussions about how the community could better support individuals like Ely and prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Vigils were held to honor her memory, with attendees lighting candles and sharing stories of her life. Washington Park, once a symbol of joy and connection, became a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities people face in public spaces. The tragedy sparked conversations about public safety, bystander responsibility, and the violence faced by women, especially those from marginalized communities. Though her life was tragically cut short, Ely's story serves as a reminder of the importance of protecting the most vulnerable members of society. Her murder was a senseless act of violence that underscored the need for greater awareness and intervention when it comes to preventing violent crime, especially against those who may not have the means to defend themselves. E's family and friends continue to mourn her loss, but they have also worked to raise awareness about the conditions that led to her death. They hope that her story will inspire change in how society views and supports vulnerable individuals, ensuring that her death was not in vain. The case of Ely is a heartbreaking example. The worst forms of violence and cruelty that can emerge from even the most ordinary places. Her murder in Washington Park not only shocked the community of Milwaukee, but also raised critical questions about the safety of public spaces and the protection of vulnerable individuals. Though justice was served with the conviction of her attackers, the pain of E's loss remains for those who knew and loved her. Her story serves as both a cautionary tale and a call to action to ensure that public spaces remain safe and that society does more to support individuals at risk. Ely's memory lives on as a reminder of the importance of compassion, protection, and justice. And if you or someone you know is facing violence or mental health challenges, you know that resources are available. Let Ely's memory inspire us to act with compassion and courage. Thank you for joining me on this journey through another case. Remember, these stories we cover aren't just tales of mystery, they are real lives impacted by tragedy. If you found this case insightful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into true crime. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the darkest places can be closer than we think. Until next time.